Just days after blasting the Supreme Court for overturning most of his tariffs, President Trump last night came face-to-face with some of the very justices who ruled against him. He, of course, criticized the court's decision, arguing congressional approval isn't necessary.
Then just 4 days ago, an unfortunate ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It just came down. It came down. Very unfortunate ruling. But the good news is that almost all countries and corporations want to keep the deal that they already made, right, Scott? Knowing that the legal power that I, as president, have to make a new deal could be far worse for them, and therefore they will continue to work along the same successful path that we had negotiated before the Supreme Court's unfortunate involvement. Congressional action will not be necessary. It's already time-tested and approved. And as time goes by, I believe the tariffs paid for by foreign countries will, like in the past, substantially replace the modern-day system of income tax, taking a great financial burden off the people that I love.
All right, so we'll see about how that policy ultimately unfolds. But Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and Justice Elena Kagan, all part of the 6-3 majority that overturned many of his tariffs, sat stone-faced as the president made those remarks. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who dissented, was also there in attendance. Last week, Trump labeled the majority a disgrace to our nation and suggested somehow foreign influence. I want to bring in here on set with me Democratic Congresswoman Janelle Bynum of Oregon. Congresswoman, thank you for coming in. You were in the chamber last night. It took us a while to get out of there, so thank you. I know you're on minimal sleep, but you were there last night, and you also said that you talked to the justices.
I did.
What did they say?
Well, I talked with Chief Justice Roberts, and I told him that Americans were counting on them to save our democracy. I asked him why the other justices weren't there, because when I went into the chamber earlier, there were 7 chairs reserved. And I was like, And then I took a bet with one of the staffers on who was going to actually show up. And so I was quite surprised there were only 4.
What did he say in response to that?
Well, he said that this has turned into basically more of a political event, and they are apolitical figures. And so people started to exercise their judgment and not show up.
I think some of your colleagues also made that decision last night. When I looked over to the Democratic side of the chamber, it was so striking to me how bare it felt. There were even Republicans encroaching on typically Democratic territory. Kat Cammack was sitting like all the way to the Democratic side.
That was odd. She was a bit alone in her fury.
But I think it told a story that some Democrats were saying, you know what, enough is enough. I'm washing my hands of this. What made you want to be in that room?
Well, I don't think you can win a fight that you don't show up to. And for me, it was about fighting for Oregonians, about fighting for Americans. I brought Daniel Dodd, who's a community college student, and he said life's hard right now. He's just trying to pay his bills, trying to get gas in the car, trying to finish school. And so I felt like the president only could see one part of America, but he wasn't seeing the truth of America.
But he did a speech that in theory was supposed to be focused on affordability. That's what a lot of the leaks before the speech were. But as someone who's trying to push a package,
chided. I don't know if he was staying on script, but he chided us about affordability and said that was a word that had been given to Democrats. Somebody gave them that word. And so I don't think he really believes in this concept of affordability.
You're working, I think, on multiple fronts on that issue, though, whether it's your K through 30 agenda, which is meant to sort of lift folks out, especially in
K through 12 and our young adults 18 through 30.
Exactly. But then also when it comes to tariff refunds for small businesses, right? As someone who's doing the work on affordability or trying to, got to get these bills some traction in Congress. What did you make of the president's remarks, and how might they land in a district like yours, which is really purple?
Well, you know, we really need the president to take things seriously. That's one reason I showed up. Like, take seriously the fact that people are still experiencing inflation. He's saying that it's going down. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know if you bought Super Bowl food, but the chips were like $6.99 and chicken wings were a lot more than that. And so we're seeing that he's living in an alternate reality that most Americans just aren't living in.
I wonder what you made, though, of the way that Democrats in the chamber largely responded. There were back and forths with Congresswoman Tlaib, Congresswoman Omar. Of course, the way that the speech began with Congressman Al Green standing up, unfurling that sign that said Black people aren't apes in reference to a Truth Social post that the president made. Allegedly, he said it was a staffer, but of course, it took hours for that to be taken down. I mean, what does that say about Democrats? Is that the right way to defy a president?
Well, what I think is important to recognize is that part of that speech is theater. But I was there for the substance. I wanted to hear him talk about housing. And I was happy that he talked about, stop allowing institutional investors to take over housing versus, the young couple that wants to get their first home. That's a real issue. I wanted him to continue talking about transparency and drug pricing. Those are real issues. I mean, I was just talking with my mom this morning about how a family member needed to get medicine, but the government wouldn't help pay for that, and it was out of pocket and very expensive. And so, people are having to choose between paying their rent or buying food and their medicine. Those are substantive issues, and I wish he had indulged in that a lot more.
Are those places, though, in a midterm election year that there can be something that happens? Because I think for Americans who were watching that speech,
nobody was watching that speech. Everybody was asleep because it was too long.
Listen, it was too long. I would never argue with that. It was on too late, and I am up too early for it to be that long. And yet, I do feel like if you're an American who was watching, you look at that body, and Congress seems more divided than ever.
Well, I actually made a new friend last night, a gentleman from Pensacola, Florida, and he and I actually agreed on something. He was a Republican, I'm a Democrat, and we talked about home ownership. And he said he was, firmly in the seat of trying to make sure home ownership remained a goal for our country. And I said, yeah, I can join you on that. And we both had concepts, and we agreed that we would talk later. And so I think that is what Americans need to see, is us trying to figure out how you listen to someone that you might not necessarily agree with. And how do you get past the rhetoric and the theater, but actually start doing the work? And that's what I was there for. I wanted to hear, how do we actually start doing the work?
Did the president set that tone?
He's the president of the entire country, and I expect him to set that tone. He's still got a long way in his second term.
We're going to see. This one definitely set the tone, I think, for the coming weeks, months, and, of course, the midterm elections. Democratic Congresswoman Janelle Bynum of Oregon, thank you for coming on. Take a nap. I think we all deserve it.
Back to work.
Oh, yeah.